Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I figured I would change some things up a little bit, and I would do a quick form critique of myself. And my overall kind of goal with this video is first off to explain why, good things that I do that explain why I can throw over 400 feet. And then also kind of the second part of it is things that I could fix to try and throw over like 460, 470-ish. Because I can kind of max out on a perfect distance line at about 450. So if I wanted to add more distance, just wanted to explain some ways that I could correct that. So let's go through this video. This video is from late fall. I think this was like late November-ish. And this was a distance driver that I threw on a slight hyzer flip line that kind of stood up out of the hyzer, turned slightly, and then faded back at the end just a touch. It's slightly uphill, and I threw this one just a teeny bit over 400 feet. So we'll watch the video in regular time first, and then I'll kind of go frame by frame and explain some things about what's going on. So let's go ahead and watch this just a couple times and see what we got. So here it is. So let's go back and go frame by frame, and let's start with our feet. So I have what I call a 4-step run-up. Technically, it could be called like a 4.5 because I take this teeny little starter step right there with my right foot. But really, it's a 4-step run-up. So I got my left foot, followed by my right foot. You'll notice my right foot is slightly more this direction than my left foot is. This is to help aid with turning your hips back and loading through the X steps. You'll see my X step is right here. Some people criticize length of X step. I don't really. I view the X step more as a comfort thing, and the distance that you take as a comfort thing. Some people say it should be like a really small step and whatnot. I think if you're comfortable taking a longer step and it feels natural and you can gain power and consistency with it, go ahead. If taking a small hop gets you power and consistency, go ahead. I mean, Eric Oakley takes a hop. Steve Brinster takes a hop. That's the origin of the Brinster hop. So really, X-stepping is about what's comfortable for you and what gets your hips loaded here. So we got my hips are turned back. My shoulders are mostly forward, though. I would recommend trying to keep your shoulders, or not shoulders forward, shoulders sideways still. I would recommend not. A common thing I see people do is during their X step right here, their shoulders are already facing backwards. Try and keep your shoulders slightly forward as you're going through your X step, and then load your shoulders as you're coming here. And I guess that's already jumping ahead, but got our X step, then on our plant foot, which is my right foot here. Again, your right foot should be more in front of your left foot. Your plant foot should be in front of your back foot. A good rule is the line that you're trying to hit, have your toes to the heel of that line. That's not perfect. I actually don't do that. I go slightly even further this direction with my right foot. But if you're just trying to learn this, you want your toes of your left foot or of your back foot to be at about the same line as the heel of your right foot, and that line should point in the direction that you're trying to throw. Once you get more power or more comfortable with that, you can gain more power by stepping a little bit more forward this direction. But that's what I recommend. All right, and then the follow through here, we've got turning on. If we look at my plant foot here. I kind of turn on my whole foot. A lot of people say you should turn on your heel. I find if I'm trying to release the disc flat or on anhyzer, I turn on my heel. If I'm trying to release on a lot of hyzer, I turn more on my toes. If I'm trying to throw kind of a slight hyzer like I do here, I turn on kind of the middle of my foot here. Again, I think it matters what's comfortable for you and what you get consistency with. So that's my feet. Let's look at my hips real quick. So when I'm loaded right here, I've got my hips loaded. They're turned back. They're kind of pointing right here. Sorry for the kind of poor quality of the video. I don't know why my video shot in like 380 or whatever, but that's what this is. So anyway, we've got my hips pointed back here and then power through the shot. So already they're pointing kind of out towards the camera, and then they're turned through and are pointing forward. You really want to make sure you're using this full kind of force of your hips, turning from back here all the way through here, really powering your shot. A lot of the power from the shot comes with your core, your glutes, and your quads. And so your hips are a good sign of whether or not you are using those muscles effectively to power the shot. Alrighty, so that's my hips. Let's look at my upper body a little bit more. So looking at, first off, right here. You can see this with my wrist right here. See this little curve in my wrist? This is something you really need if you're going to throw any type of distance. If you want to get to 400, you need to make sure your wrist is like this. Your wrist needs to be pointed down so that the nose angle of the disc is also pointed down. A disc flies best if it is nose angle slightly down compared to the line that you are throwing it on. And so this is a big, important step. It's almost like, I've heard a really good example is like you're pouring a drink from a pitcher. If you're pouring a drink from a pitcher, your wrist is going to be curved slightly downwards as you're pouring it, because that'll give you control over it. That's the angle you want to hold your disc on when you're throwing it. You want it to be nose down. And you'll see as I come through here, it's still nose down. Even though I'm throwing it in the air, it's nose down on that line that I'm throwing it on. So that's nose down. Talking about the power pocket here, this is an important part. I don't actually have a frame that's perfectly in the power pocket. It's kind of in between these two frames, closer to this one though. The power pocket is basically when the upper part of your arm, your humerus, is pointed straight down. You want your elbow at about a 90-degree angle, which I've got right here. I've got like my forearm is perfectly flat, and you see that when it comes through here, it's still flat to the ground. That's what you want. You want this 90-degree angle, and then you want your shoulders still slightly turned back when the disc gets to be about in front of you. So when the disc is in front of me, my shoulders are still slightly back. That's what generates this kind of power of your rotating to gain the power. It's a rotational force that generates your power, actually. It's your body turning on like a pole. Like imagine if there was a pole kind of like right here, basically. You're spinning on that pole to generate the power. And so your shoulders being slightly cocked back still. Basically by back, I mean the line is like this as opposed to like this. With your shoulders being slightly cocked back, you're able to generate more of that rotational energy. And so you're able to get more power. So that's something you really want to look for if you're looking for the power angle. That's, again, something that if you're throwing over 400, that's pretty much what you need to have. Alrighty. Last thing I want to mention is I'm throwing this on a slight hyzer flip. So I'm releasing the disc slightly on hyzer. And I want you to watch what my right arm does after the release. My right arm continues upwards after the release. So you see my wrist is here. It's about the height of like the top of my abs. And at this point, it is over my shoulders. This is maintaining the integrity of the angle of your release. You want to, if you're releasing on hyzer, you want to keep your arm upwards, going upwards to at least this point, and then it can start coming back down. I still keep mine kind of high throughout the back, and then it drops at about this point here. But you need to keep that angle. If you were to, let's say if I was throwing it on hyzer here, and then instead of raising my arm, I immediately kind of drop my arm back to down here, I'm going to end up not hitting the hyzer angle that I'm wanting as much. I call it angle integrity with your arm. If you're missing your angle integrity, keeping your arm moving on the same angle as your release, you're going to miss that angle more often than not. And so you need consistency with that. That's something that's really helpful if you're trying to get into like advanced or pro. Being able to hit an angle consistently with your throw, that is a huge thing. So that's another good thing that I have. So all of those really lead to me being able to throw consistently like 420 probably on a controlled shot. So now let's look at why I don't throw over 450 consistently. And there's multiple reasons. Let's start again with the feet then. So let's look at right when I'm planting out of my X step. So right here. Oops, right here. That's where I first plant. What you want is you want your feet. Let's say I'm throwing on this line right here. You want your feet to be mostly perpendicular to that line. So that if you drew a 90-degree angle from the line that you're trying to throw and the direction your feet are pointing, you want that to be about 90 degrees right there. It's okay if your back foot is a little bit closed, meaning pointing back a little bit, but you really need to make sure your front foot is, because that's how you generate more action with your hips. My foot, here's a slight critique for me, and I'm going to be nitpicky with me because I want to throw 450 and above consistently. My critique for me is my toes, my foot is pointing slightly forwards compared to the line that it should be on. It should be pointing more straight down this direction. It's pointing more like this. And so if I corrected this angle, maybe a 30-degree angle, I could generate a little bit more power with my hips. So that's a thing that I could make a fix on if I wanted to be able to throw a little bit more powerfully. Another thing related to the lower body that I think I could fix is my brace. My brace looks really good at this point. Your brace is the stopping of your forward energy and turning your forward energy from your run-up into rotational energy to power the distance, or power the disc moving forward. So we've got a really good brace right here. If you notice, if we go back a couple frames, my hips are here. So let's take my front right hip. I've got my hip here. As I'm rotating through, my hip stays in pretty much the same point throughout that up until right there. And then I start moving forward. You'll notice my knee bends forwards and my hips immediately start falling forward and moving forward. So this is one thing that I really want to fix and that I'm having a hard time fixing. It's ensuring that I keep my momentum stopped when I'm rotate. Because the ideal is basically you do your run up and then all of that energy turns into rotational energy, sending the disc outwards. You don't want to have any energy left over in your body after that throw moving forwards. You'll notice that I call it a fall through. I fall through my shot. See, my hips are moving forward quite a bit, and I come off maybe a yard from the tee pad or so. That's not good. I need my follow through, basically, I need all of my energy to stop at this point. And so my follow-through really should end with my front foot going right here, pretty much right next to my right foot. My left foot needs to not be having to catch my body so far forwards, because that means I'm keeping too much energy in my body. I need to generate more of that into the disc. So that's one thing. That's probably, I would say, the biggest thing that's keeping me from getting a lot of distance on these, or a lot more distance on these shots. If I can brace a little bit more fully, I'll probably be able to add at least 30 more feet onto my shot, I would say. if not more, if I'm bracing perfectly. So that's another critique. One more thing. This one's a little bit more consistency based as opposed to throwing distance based. And that is this little swoop that my arm does. So I'm going to put my cursor right on my hand here. Then I'm going to move forward. You'll notice, this is right where it was, you'll notice that it comes up. It's up higher than what it was before. This little swooping motion leads to a little bit of inconsistency and a little bit less distance than what I possibly could be generating. What your goal should be is if you can keep your hand kind of at the same height the entire time up until the point of your release, that would be perfect, because then you're going to be able to control the nose angle more, and you're going to be able to pull through on a straight line more often, and so you're going to be more consistent. If you have this little dip here, what ends up happening, and what I do just a little bit, is you'll notice my hand is above my elbow. That is not good. That tends to make someone throw nose up slightly. Now, I still release the disc nose down, but it's not as nose down as it should be. And it's not something I can correct by just bending my wrist down more, because then I'm not going to be able to throw it as well. I need to correct this little swoop, this little lift in my arm, if I want to be able to keep the nose fully down on my shot. So you'll see it drops. It's still, my hand is still above my elbow. Now it kind of comes back down. My hand comes down to my elbow's height, and then I come up slightly at the end. So my wrist kind of does this motion. It comes here, then it comes down, and then it comes up. And when it comes up, that means I'm throwing at a higher angle than what I need to be, and my nose angle is going to be slightly higher than the angle that I'm throwing it on. So if I could adjust that little swoop, I'll be more consistent, and I'll be able to add just a little bit more distance. Another thing with my reach back is my timing is slightly off. It's not that bad, but if I could time my reach back I would say peaks right here, which is about a frame before I plant my foot. If I could plant my foot and peak my reach back at the same time, that would be the ideal, because then you are, I call it the rubber band effect. If you want to launch a rubber band really far, you need to pull it back as far as you possibly can, and then release it, and it will shoot forward as far as possible. So if you pulled it back slightly less far, you're getting a little less distance total. And so that's what you're kind of doing with your arm. You're stretching the rubber band back and then releasing forwards. So imagine kind of there was like a rubber band from the point of your foot to like your disc, and for some reason it didn't power the disc straight down, it powered it forwards. Well, if that was the case, you would stretch the disc more if your disc, or if your foot planted and your arm reached back at the max at the same time. Now, some people say that you shouldn't reach back, you should walk around the disc, and somewhat that's true, I would say. I would say that's somewhat true. So you'll see kind of the disc stays for the most part in the same area. So it's kind of like at about this distance here. So I'm not exactly like reaching back. I'm walking around the disc. I think that's an okay idea. I don't necessarily think there's a better way of teaching reach back, walking around the disc or reaching back itself. But either way, power throwers reach back at least somewhat. Even Seppo reaches back. Everyone has what we call a reach back. So having a reach back is important. Timing is the most important part of it, and having a consistent height with your arm, which I talked about earlier. The last thing, and this is honestly kind of the stupid one that I really should have fixed by this point that I haven't yet, and I don't know why I haven't, is look at my left arm and what's it doing out away from my body in this picture. At this point, my arm needs to be pressed up tight against my body or even down on the inside of my left leg. I don't know why I keep my arm out. You generate more energy rotating if your arm is in. Remember, you're rotating around a pole, so you want to keep that keep your extremities in as best you can to rotate around it faster. You'll notice like figure skaters, they keep their arms in really close if they're trying to spin. Gymnasts, arms in really close if they're trying to spin. They don't have it flapping in the breeze like I do for some reason. That's definitely something that I'm looking to fix. I don't know why I haven't fixed it yet. I don't know why it's hard for me to do, but that's something that needs to be fixed. So, that's my form critique. Hopefully, I gave you some good pointers on why I throw 400 and what things you could work on if you were looking to, throw 400. And hopefully you see things that I could improve on if I wanted to be able to throw even further. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'd like to thank my sponsors first off, Team Plastic Addicts, and then my new one, which you might have seen on my Facebook and Instagram, but I am also sponsored this year by Millennium Golf Discs. And so I'll hopefully be putting out some more content related to Millennium Discs and In the Bag at some point coming up here. I still need to figure out what exactly is going to be in my bag, but that's some exciting news from me. So thank you to both of them for their support for this upcoming season. I hope everybody has a great day. Stay safe, and if you can, throw some discs.